I'll never forget the first time I noticed something was wrong. It was a Tuesday night, just past 11, and I was taking out the trash. My neighbor's porch light was off, which wasn't unusual, but the curtain in his side window moved, just slightly, like someone had been standing there watching, and stepped back when I looked up. I told myself it was nothing. The wind, maybe, or a cat. But the air was still that night. Dead still. And I remember thinking how strange it was that the curtain fell back into place so perfectly, as if whoever had been holding it let go at the exact moment I turned. My house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in a suburb outside Portland. The kind of neighborhood where everyone waves, but no one really knows each other. The man next door had moved in about 3 months earlier. He kept to himself, never introduced himself, and never joined the block party in August. I only knew his car, a dark sedan with out-of-state plates, and that he worked nights because his lights were always off during the day. At first, the signs were subtle. A trash can that had been moved 2 feet to the left. A faint footprint in the flower bed under my bedroom window. The sense, more than any proof, that someone had been in my yard while I was asleep. I started locking my doors at all times, even when I was home. I checked the windows before bed. I bought a motion light for the back porch. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. Here's what finally broke me. On October 12th, I came home from work and found a single sheet of notebook paper taped to my front door. There was no name, no address, just a sentence written in careful block letters. I know when you leave. I know when you come back. I know when you're asleep. I called the police that night. 2 officers came, took photos, and asked if I had security cameras. I didn't, not then. They told me there wasn't much they could do without evidence of a specific threat. They told me to keep a log and call again if anything else happened. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak and groan of the house. Around 2:30 in the morning, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching on the gravel path that runs along the side of my house. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom window, and then I heard a voice. Low, calm, almost a whisper. "Still awake, huh?" I grabbed my phone and called 911 again. The dispatcher kept me on the line while I waited in the dark, my back pressed against the headboard, phone shaking in my hand. The police arrived 8 minutes later. They searched the yard, the alley, the street. No one was there. My neighbor's car was gone. His house was dark. The officer who spoke to me that night was sympathetic but honest. He said that without a visual ID or a recording, there was nothing they could do. He strongly suggested I install security cameras immediately. I bought 3 cameras the next day, 1 for the front door, 1 for the back, and 1 pointed at the side yard. I told myself I'd feel better once they were up. I was wrong. What I saw on the footage the next morning made me feel worse. At 1:47 a.m., a figure had walked up to my front door, stood there for 11 seconds, and then walked away. The face was obscured by a hood, but the build, the walk, the height, they were unmistakable. It was my neighbor. He had been standing at my door while I was sleeping. I took the footage to the police. This time, they listened. They went to his house, knocked, and got no answer. They left a warning note. That afternoon, I saw him through my kitchen window standing in his driveway, staring at my house. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He just stood there for what felt like forever. If this story is already making your stomach tighten, I understand. Because what happened next is the part that still keeps me up at night. 3 days later, I found a small cardboard box on my doorstep. Inside was a single item. A photograph of my front door, taken from the sidewalk, with a timestamp showing 2:15 a.m. On the back, written in the same block letters, was a message: "You forgot to lock the back door." I had locked the back door that night. I was sure of it. But when I checked the footage again, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. At 2:14, the figure returned to my side gate. He was there for less than a minute, and when he left, the gate was slightly ajar. I moved out 3 weeks later. I broke the lease, paid the penalty, and left most of my furniture behind. I didn't tell the landlord why. I didn't want to give that man the satisfaction of knowing he had won. But even after you leave, the feeling stays with you. It's in every shadow, every unexpected sound, every time you glance at a window and catch the curtain moving too late to see who was there. The second story is one I heard from a friend of mine. Her name was Carla, and she lived in a duplex in the suburbs of Chicago. The year was 2019. She had a neighbor in the unit next door, a middle-aged woman who seemed friendly enough at first. They exchanged hellos and waved from their driveways. But after a few months, Carla started noticing odd things. Her mail would be opened before it arrived. Her trash bags would be torn, the contents scattered across the driveway. Her dog, a normally calm lab, would growl at the shared wall every night at the same time, just after midnight. Carla didn't think much of it until she installed a Ring camera. That's when she saw her neighbor at 1 a.m, pressed against Carla's living room window, cupping her hands around her eyes to block the glare. She stayed there for nearly 20 minutes, just staring into the dark room. When Carla confronted her the next day, the woman smiled and said, "I thought I heard someone in your house. I was just checking on you." But the smile didn't reach her eyes, and her explanation didn't match what the camera had captured. Carla started keeping a diary of the incidents. By the end of the month, she had 23 entries. The neighbor had come by at all hours, knocked on the door and then hid, and left notes that said things like, "You should be more careful," and "Not everyone who watches you is a stranger." Carla called the police. They issued a formal warning to the neighbor. It only made things worse. The notes stopped appearing, but the woman started standing in her driveway, staring at Carla's door for hours at a time. Sometimes she would wave, slow and deliberate, like she knew exactly how much it was creeping Carla out. Carla eventually moved too. She didn't tell me where. I hope she's safe. I hope she stopped checking over her shoulder. The third story is the one that made me realize how deep this pattern really goes, and it's the one I still can't shake. It happened in a small town in Ohio in the late summer of 2022. A man named Eric had moved into a quiet residential street, hoping for a fresh start after a divorce. His neighbor was an elderly couple, retired, quiet, the kind of people who kept their lawn pristine and their opinions to themselves. Eric was a veteran. He kept a handgun in his nightstand, which he thought was just a precaution. He never expected to use it. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a note. "We see you coming and going. You're not as invisible as you think." Eric assumed it was the elderly couple. He knocked on their door, but the wife said her husband had been bedridden for weeks and couldn't have written anything. She seemed genuine, and the handwriting on the note didn't match hers. In fact, it didn't match anyone's in the household. The notes kept coming. They appeared inside his garage, under his windshield wiper, and in his mailbox. "You forgot your living room light on again. You left the back window open. I can see into your bathroom from here." The last one broke him. It read, in that same careful script, "You won't hear me coming, but you'll feel the cold air when the door opens." Eric installed a motion-detecting floodlight and a deadbolt. He also started recording video from his phone, propped against a book on his nightstand, every single night. On the 7th night of recording, at 3:11 a.m., The video caught the sound of a handle being tested, then another. Then the sliding glass door in the back, the one he had checked 3 times before bed, slid open with a quiet scrape. Eric woke up to a figure standing at the foot of his bed, silhouetted against the dim light from the hallway. The figure was wearing a mask. It held something in its hand. Eric reached for the gun in his nightstand, fingers fumbling, heart hammering. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching. Eric shouted. The figure turned and walked out, slow, unhurried, like it had all the time in the world. The police found no forced entry and no fingerprints. But 2 weeks later, a neighbor from 2 doors down, a woman in her 60s, was arrested for breaking into another house on the same street. She had been using a key she'd stolen from the landlord's office. She'd been watching that neighborhood for years, picking houses where people lived alone. If you've ever jumped at a noise in your own house at 3 a.m., you know the feeling I'm describing. That sick drop in your stomach when you realize you're not as alone as you thought you were. Eric moved to a different state. He still checks his sliding door 3 times before bed. He still sleeps with the lights on, and he still wonders who was watching him and whether they're watching someone else now. I live in a different city now, in a building with a doorman and a security system. I thought I'd feel safe again. But last week I saw a figure in the window of the apartment across the courtyard, standing still, looking my way. I don't know if it was my neighbor. I don't know if it was a coincidence, but I closed my blinds, locked the door, and checked the footage from my camera 3 times before I went to sleep. I still don't feel safe. Maybe that's the point. Maybe once you've been watched, you never really stop feeling the gaze. You just learn to live with it. If this video made you think twice about staying home alone, please subscribe to The Dark Hour for more real accounts, and tell me in the comments, what is the one thing in your house that you are now paranoid about? I'll see you in the dark.